Well, folks, the rain has stopped and the sun is peeking out through the clouds here in Vegas, kind of like the NASDAQ this week. So the NASDAQ started out the week around 15,300 and then exploded higher to finish the week at just under 16,000. Now, at this time last week, I released a video called "The NASDAQ Will Explode Higher Next Week," and that is exactly what played out. NVIDIA, this was a big week for NVIDIA. This was the week where it put to rest all the thoughts about could NVIDIA's business fall? Are these just short-term positive tailwinds behind the business? This week, after hearing all the big tech companies talk about how much they're going to be spending, and they're going to be spending more than ever, it put down, let's just call it, all those expectations about maybe NVIDIA's business model is going to break. That stock was up over 12% this week. Tesla, maybe they're not done after all. Tesla stock was up about 20 percentage points this week after, we can call it got rid of some of that fear that was out there, right? Meta did an intelligence test for everybody in the stock market. They talked about CapEx might be a couple $1 billion higher than they had forecast. And the stock after hours that day lost $200 billion of market cap. We call that an intelligence test. We have an absolutely epic week ahead with SoFi earnings, PayPal earnings, Amazon, Supermicro, AMD, Starbucks, Apple, Fubo, so many earnings coming up here. Three core subjects I want to speak about here today. I want to talk about some bad news. I got some bad news to give that we'll get that out of the way at first, okay? You know, as they say, you want your bad news first or later, I might as well just get it out of the way. Then we're going to talk about why I'm buying more Palantir shares before their earnings. And if I'm buying a stock before earnings, I have to feel like there's a decent probability that things are going to go, let's call it upward, quite substantially. And the third thing we'll discuss here today is how I'm feeling about SoFi's earnings, Amazon's earnings, Apple's earnings, PayPal and Fubo earnings that are all happening this week. Am I confident? Am I not confident? I appreciate y'all joining me as always. If you enjoy these in-depth videos each day, please smash a thumbs up, the like button on this video, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you're looking to apply to join my private group this upcoming week, get access to all my best course curriculums, access to 6- and 7-figure Discord chat, all that good stuff, then click the pinned comment down there. You fill out an application. We'll see if we can get you in there next week. We have some really strong communities: Fubo, Meta, Palantir. We have one of the best Palantir communities out there, if not the best. PayPal, SoFi, Tesla. So if you want to be around like-minded investors that are always keeping up to date with everything going on with these companies, you might want to check it out. Okay, pin comment down there to apply to join us in there. Okay, so first off here, let's get through some bad news before we get to the exciting stuff. Okay, so this is our investor weekly report we put out to private group members and goes through a ton of information to keep everybody very educated on what's going on out there. I understand everybody's very busy and has a lot going on. So this report just kind of recaps a lot of valuable information each week that you need to know. Okay, and I just want to take you through a small amount of the information we cover in there each week for the private group members. So this is first off, this looks at AAI investor sentiment. This is how investors are feeling about the stock market for the next 6 months specifically. Are they bullish on the market the next 6 months, bearish, neutral for the next 6 months? Okay, what we're going to find is we have now moved significantly below our historical average of people feeling bullish on the market the next 6 months. We have also moved now above where we are usually at for bearishness. So basically, as of now, investors are feeling much more pessimistic, I guess the best way you could put it, okay? Not very optimistic, much more pessimistic, and not just more pessimistic than they were, let's say, 3 weeks ago or a month ago, but much more pessimistic than they usually feel, okay? Now, that could be seen as also potentially if you want to look at a contrarian view on that, you could actually look at that and you could view it in terms of like, man, maybe this is actually good for the market because if less people are bullish, that means we're probably going to be more bullish. So, there's several different ways you can look at that. One thing you can't look at in dispute, this is only bad, is consumer sentiment. So consumer sentiment survey came in at 77.2 in April. That's down from March's reading, and we're at the bottom line is with consumer sentiment, this basically shows you inflation is still a problem. Consumer sentiment is usually only going to go down in a significant way if people are feeling the bite from inflation or if the jobs market's really bad. If either of those two situations are transpiring, you usually see a weakening consumer sentiment. If you have low inflation and a good, healthy jobs market, usually consumers feeling great. And so you'll see consumer sentiment numbers of 90 plus usually on that. But yeah, right now we're going down, if anything. And that's not good. To me, that smells like the inflation is still an issue for the consumer out there. To add insult to injury, this is absolutely brutal. I mean, I don't know how the home buying market for the spring, which the spring is the exciting time for the home buyer market, it's going to have to be brutal. And I called this out months ago. And sure enough, I mean, we're looking at mortgage rates this week. I saw one day was at 7.25, current rate 7.17 on a 30-year mortgage. You know, when you got to understand, for the past 15, 20 years, everybody got used to mortgage rates between 2.5% and 4.5% for like the last 15 to 20 years. So everybody's used to that. The only people that aren't used to those sorts of mortgage rates might be, I don't know, people that are 60 years old and above, but a lot of those people just buy cash. So mortgage rates is, the bottom line is, if you're between the ages of, 25 and 50, you've been your brain for the last, 15, 20 years has been around 2.5 to 4.5% mortgage rates. And so when all of a sudden you're talking about 7% plus, it's just brutal, man. Absolutely brutal. Now, it gets worse. That's actually not all the bad news. It gets much worse. Have you seen UPS's earnings that came out a few days ago? This was a disaster. It's a D for disaster, folks. So UPS's revenue's down across the board. Now, meanwhile, their expenses are not dropping nearly as quickly as their revenue's dropping. And if that's a situation, you got to understand your profitability is going to be a mess. And sure enough, total operating profit down 36.5% for UPS, net income down 41% for the company, earnings per share down over 40% for the company year over year. D for disaster for UPS. So you can look at this two ways. One way is, that's recessionary. That's a tell that we're going to have a recession, that UPS's business is bad, right? The other tell on that could be, if you want to look at it a glass half full, is, their business is really bad right now, but it's going to get a lot better over the next 1 to 2 years. So, you can look at it either way, but the bottom line is this is not good news. Caterpillar, very strange. I was looking at Caterpillar's numbers here. Caterpillar total sales and revenue was down year over year. And that's so strange because you think about all the home building going on and the land clearing for that, and you think about still all the apartment communities being built, and you think about, you think about the big projects that are being done, and you think about the government spending and the infrastructure and the bridges and roads and highways. And so to see their revenue down, very strange. Their earnings per share was great, but that revenue being down, I would call that strange, man. Very, very strange. Did you see Southwest Airlines earnings? Disaster. So the revenue was up very nice, and that's where the good news ended, because after that, it's all bad. Salaries, wages, and benefits were up 18.6%. Well, if your revenue is up 10.9% and your salaries, wages, and benefits are up 18.6%, your profitability is not going to be good. Maintenance, materials, and repairs up 50% year over year for the company. Landing fees and airport rentals up nearly 14% year over year for the company. So total operating expenses are up 12.2%. Well, revenue is up 10.9%. So your profitability is going to get wrecked, right? Operating loss increased 38% year over year. Net loss increased 45 flapjacking% year over year, okay? So what I just ran you through there was pretty brutal. And you got to remember, there's a lot of companies that exist in the stock market outside of, Meta, Google, Microsoft, Tesla, and the big techs that everybody talks about 50 times a day, okay? And these are very important companies. I just took you through Caterpillar, UPS, Southwest Airlines, very important companies. And I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed by Caterpillar having revenue go down in this environment. How is that even possible? UPS having that might be the worst earnings report I've ever seen in my life from UPS. As somebody that's been in the market for over 15 years now, I don't think I've ever seen UPS report that bad of numbers. That's just crazy. And then Southwest Airlines, geez, they're usually arguably the most well-run airline company. And so for them to report that bad of a quarter is no bueno. No bueno. Alrighty, so we got the bad news out of the way. I'm happy we did that because I don't always love to talk about bad news, but we got to talk about it, right? It's a subject. Alrighty, so let's get into Palantir, why I'm buying more Palantir shares before their earnings here, okay? So first off, if you follow me on Patreon, if you're a Patreon member, Palantir was one of the 5 stocks I bought today, literally, right? And here's the deal, okay? So I was looking at Microsoft's numbers, listening to Microsoft's commentary, AI strong like Donkey Kong. Microsoft's already starting to see a lot of benefits from AI overall, and I think that bodes very well for companies like Palantir. Now, if we think about Palantir, this is fascinating because U.S. commercial revenue growth last quarter, which that was a 2023 quarter, by the way, that was up 70% year over year. Now, what about the previous quarter? Where was growth at for U.S. commercial? Well, that quarter growth was at 33%. But what about the previous quarter? Well, the previous quarter was 20% U.S. commercial revenue growth. So let me get this right. We went from 20% U.S. commercial revenue growth to then 33% to then 70 percentage points. Where's this quarter going to be at? Is this quarter another 70% number? Are we still accelerating like 80%, 90%, 110%? I don't know. All I know is it's going to be great. It's going to be great. That's very comforting to know that we're going to be going into this quarter with a great number. Once again, is it better than 70%? I don't know. If it is, if we come in at like an 81% number, an 85% number, a 97% U.S. commercial revenue growth number, you could see a 3 handle on Palantir end of week. No joke. If you were to see if we take that number up to a higher level than 70%, you will probably see something with a 3 in front of this stock next week at this time. And I know that's hard for a lot of people to wrap their heads around right now because Palantir is not even remotely close to that. I mean, just a day ago, it was trading at, $20 a share? So to then think about 30 or above, but that's what will likely happen. If we come in with an 85, 95, 110% revenue growth, it'd be shocking. Absolutely shocking, okay? So now keep in mind, in regards to 2024, these numbers, this isn't even really a lot of the reality of AI yet. Because if we know something, we know 2024 is really the year where all the companies will really thrive that sell somewhat software-related products, right? So, like 2023 was really the year of NVIDIA. And obviously NVIDIA is going to continue to benefit for years to go in the future with chips. But, NVIDIA is kind of, they're the chip company. They're kind of building the highways and the roads for everybody, right? And you have Palantir, which is like the buildings for the city. And I just think like the revenue growth we're going to see from this company is going to far outstrip where analysts are at. And if it far outstrips where analysts are at, then analysts are going to have to go much more bullish on Palantir, which is going to lead to an entire upgrade cycle in regards to Palantir stock. Not only will it lead to an upgrade cycle of people going from underperforms to overperform and, holds to buys and buys to strong buys and things like that, but then you're going to be looking at a whole cycle of people raising their price targets on it. Analysts will have to start adjusting all their numbers because let's say all of a sudden Palantir is growing at a much more rapid clip than where analysts think they're going to be growing at. That's going to lead to a whole upgrade cycle there. Palantir is still at the infant stage of profitability, so if they expand that meaningfully this year, which analysts are actually pretty conservative with EPS estimates for this year, then you're talking about you got it all, right? And that's why all of a sudden you can get this insane kind of momentum there. And then we still don't even have S&P 500 inclusion happening yet, right? And that's still like, I would say, if I had to put odds on it, I would say 95% probability Palantir gets in the S&P 500 at some point this year. In 2024, I would say 95%, 5% probability doesn't happen. So that's still out there, right? So if all of a sudden growth starts coming in way better than expected revenue and earnings per share, margin growth, and you get an upgrade cycle, and then, S&P 500 inclusion is likely still coming this year at some point, it's not hard to imagine all of a sudden the stock's got a 3 in front of it, right? And so that could be pretty dang epic. My thing is, so I hold 5,555 shares in the public account. It's about $125,000 position. I put in less than 50,000 into it, right? And so we've made way more on the stock than I even put into the stock. My hunches in regards to the situation, I'm going to be looking back 12 months from now, and I think I'm going to be in a situation where I'm like, I wish I bought way heavier. I think that's what is going to happen. I'm going to be looking back and I'm like, why did I not buy more Palantir? Oh my gosh. Which is not the worst situation in the stock market. There's much worse situations than that. But that's my hunch. When I look at this, I think it's going to be very, very exciting. And I think CARP's going to be out there very, very confident. Now, obviously, if all of a sudden, let's say growth rates plummeted, then it's a whole different situation. Then you're looking at Palantir back at $18, $19. But considering now we're going into the 2024 numbers and considering the AIP boot camps, it's just really, really hard for me not to see growth, maybe even accelerating more or just coming in with some epic numbers here. So, yeah, I'm feeling very, very bullish on Palantir, okay? Now, am I going to play any Palantir call options for this week? No. You never know. All of a sudden, one number could be off for Palantir and maybe they find a way to sell it off like they did Meta. I don't know. I'm not feeling like that's going to happen, but still, like, I'm not going to play that game. No. Oh, and by the way, Palantir actually reporting next week. Not this coming week, the following week, Palantir's reporting, which hopefully they're reporting after hours. I think they're reporting after hours because I'm looking forward to hopefully live streaming that on Twitch, okay? All right, next subjects to get into. How am I feeling about SoFi earnings this week? Amazon, Apple, PayPal, Fubo, they're all reporting this week. How am I feeling about each of those companies? Well, let's go through them one by one, okay? SoFi Technologies. So first off, SoFi is a pretty small position for me overall. I have 3,000 shares in the public account. First off, I have not owned SoFi long enough to really be able to gauge if they're going to beat earnings per share and revenue yet. I just haven't owned the stock for long enough to really make judgments on that. But what I'll say is I feel pretty great going into these earnings. Seeing what last quarter was, I think Anthony Noto put out very conservative guidance and kind of expectations for this quarter we're in now at this point in time. He tampered down everybody's expectations in quite a considerable way. Stocks going into these earnings at $7 a share in the $7 range. So I feel pretty good. I feel pretty dang good. But, I'm going to probably still feel good about SoFi until the jobs market breaks. If and when that ever happens, whether it's this year, next year, the following year, I don't know. That's when I'll get a little worried about SoFi because at the end of the day, they are a bank and I'd worry about all banks if the job market ends up breaking. But for right now, I think SoFi is set up very, very well. And I think at the end of this year, SoFi is going to have a lot more respect than what they have now. Okay, so I feel very good going into those earnings. I'm looking very forward to that conference call as well. Amazon. So Amazon, by the way, I will be doing a Twitch live stream Tuesday after the bell. I'll probably start a little before the market closes that particular day. So if you haven't joined me on Twitch, definitely do so because Amazon's reporting after the bell that day, AMD, Supermicro, and Starbucks as well. And Amazon's a pretty big position for me. $189,000 in the public count, over 1,000 shares there. I feel great about Amazon. I spoke in depth about Amazon in yesterday's video. It was kind of toward the last 5 minutes of the video, if I recall, or last 10 minutes of that video. I spoke in depth about AWS, about the e-commerce business, about the advertising business, the tells we've had in regards to that. And so I feel great in regards to Amazon. If Amazon's under 200 this time next week, I'll be surprised, actually. Very surprised. Very surprised. I'll say that about Amazon. Be very surprised if it's under 200. And that's a long way from 200, but I'll be surprised if it's under 200 at this time next week. PayPal. So PayPal, big position for me. I finally turned green on this one, up about 5.5% in the public count. Up is now a 5-figure winner for us, chicken dinner. 3,105 shares going into these earnings with. I feel great about PayPal. Looking at Meta's earnings, looking at Google, looking at what these companies are reporting, I'm feeling very, very good. Very, very good about PayPal's numbers. There's nothing going on out there that makes me say, oh, shoot, PayPal, I'm really worried about this one. I'm scared. I think this might be the quarter Alex Chriss starts to get some respect, too. Wall Street hasn't really given him respect yet, even though his pedigree is unbelievable coming over from Intuit, right? And all the success Intuit's had over the years and how instrumental he was to that success of Intuit, right? One of the most loved stocks in the stock market. This could be the quarter he might start getting some respect. If he comes in, beats revenue again, beats earnings per share again, right? Then there would be, this is a third conference call he's going to be on, the third earnings they're talking about. If he comes in a third time, beats all analyst expectations, I think you've got to start giving the guy some respect, right? And then I think more and more folks will understand PayPal's story, which is actually very important as well to understand the story, and that could push that stock much higher. So I'm feeling very good going into these PayPal earnings. And the other thing is PayPal's valuation's on the floor. I mean, it's on the floor. It's like trades at like a forward P of like 11 or 12. So it's not like it's going into this earnings like super high valuation, like some stock that's gone up so much and you're like, oh crap, man. No. And I like the bullish activity today. The stock was up nearly 3 percentage points here today. I would love to see the stock go to the 70s. And I would love to see it somewhere in the 70s at this time next week. I would love to see that. Get out of the 60s area. And if there's a stock I'm rooting the most for going up, it's PayPal. Shareholders have been through a very tough past, several years if they held it for several years. But, I think a lot of people got interested in the stock really in the past year because that's after the big crash had already happened and the valuation got so compelling. And, I'm really rooting for PayPal. I feel great going in their earnings, but I'm rooting for this stock. I want to see this at a $75 price or $79, $78, something like that. This time next week, it would be great to see. It'd be so great to see. So we'll see. But usually when you're hoping for something in the market, usually the opposite happens. So we'll probably have 55 after, and I'll be like, oh, great, man. PayPal's never going to go up. It's going to be stuck at a forward P of 10 forever, right? Fubo. So Fubo they're reporting Friday before the bell. That's usually how they report. Obviously, the investment's gone horrible, I guess we can say so far. With that being said, last quarter, we witnessed the company increase subscribers at a very nice clip. We watched the company's revenues increase at a very nice clip. We watched the company bring down their losses in a substantial way. And we watched the company increase their margins across the board in a substantial way. So if you look at everything in the fundamentals of the business model last quarter, it's all going in the right direction. Now, we need to see a continuation of that in this quarter as well. On top of that, we need to get some clarity on the legal stuff. So they're fighting Disney and Warner Brothers and I can't remember the other one they're fighting, right? In a big suit going on right now. We need some clarity on what's legal expense looking like for Fubo to handle in regards to the situation. Because we don't really have, I don't think they give enough clarity on that last quarter. We don't know if this is a situation where Fubo's coming all out of pocket. We don't know if the law firms may be taking part of this as far as the expense, and maybe the law firm is going to get something on the back end if they win. It's still a lot of things that were unclear in regards to last quarter. We need more clarity on that this quarter, because that's the big bad boogeyman that I think everybody's scared of. Like, how much is legal? What if Fubo spends $50 million on this in legal expense this year? I mean, that'd be a crazy number for Fubo to spend, right? And it's not like they're in a cash position to just, spend crazy amounts of money on legal expenses. So we got to get clarity on that. So we need the business model to continue to trend right, and we got to get. Here's a deal, okay? If the legal expenses aren't too crazy in regards to this Fubo situation, right? And we see all the numbers continue to improve, revenue, subscribers, losses come down. Don't be surprised if the stock pops 20 to 35% this week. This week. Not talking over the next month or the next year. This week. But we got to get those things through. I hope David Gandler is going to be very transparent about legal expenses there, kind of his expectations, things like that, because that's what everybody wants, I feel like. This is what everybody's waiting on. Like, just give us it. Just let us know, man. And, if things go well, the stock will be up huge this week, okay? Next one up here, Apple. So Apple, it's a little scary because you got to understand Apple matters so much to the market. It's such a massive market cap. It matters substantially to the Qs. It's the second most important stock in the Qs, second most important stock in weighting in the S&P 500. So Apple can negatively or positively affect the semiconductor stocks as well. So that's just another, kind of food for thought in regards to the situation. So the good news for Apple is expectations for this quarter are very low, very low. Literally, analysts have Apple's revenue going negative, which it's been a bit since we've seen Apple's revenue go negative, right? That's pretty incredible in a second quarter. So they have revenue going negative. They also have earnings per share going even further negative at 4.4% there. So that's good. If Apple misses those, that's going to be very disheartening, I think, for a lot of Apple investors because, it's like you usually expect Apple to grow. If the business is shrinking, that's not great. But the other problem is the next quarter, analysts then have the company suddenly get back to growth, not big growth, but 1.6% revenue growth, 4% on earnings per share. If the company is going to have revenues down and earnings per share down in this current quarter they're about to report, I don't see how all of a sudden they're going to go to 4% EPS growth and 1 to 2% revenue growth in the next quarter. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. I don't think there's going to be anything that's going to change for the positive, for the better in Apple in the current quarter. Like I just don't see it. Vision Pro looks like a huge failure, so don't expect that to magically help out Apple's numbers. iPhone is in a bad place for this year, in my opinion, so don't expect that to bail out things. The iPad line is supposed to get a refresh, but that's, we'll see if that affects numbers positively at all. Mac is just Mac. On the wearable side, obviously Apple Watch is usually a very popular seller in the last quarter of the year in terms of the calendar year. So I just don't know if I see anything that just magically turns that around. So, but the good news is Apple's stock price has not really done anything in a long time, to be honest. I mean, you could look back at this stock 3 years ago. Let's pull it up. Let's pull Apple stock up. Let's do it right now, baby. Let's pull Apple stock up over the last 3 years or so and really see, has Apple stock gone anywhere in the past several years? Let's check this out. So Apple, there we go, baby. All right, so let's pull up a 5 year. So a 5 year, Apple's done really, really well, right? We can call it the prior to Rona period. But, we want to go back here to see where the stock was kind of April of 2021. So that would be 3 years ago. So this was April 2021. So stock's up about 26% in the past, we can call it 3 years or so, right? And then if we want to look, so this is around where the stock was, we can call it about 2 years ago, was about 161 versus 169 right now, right? And then what about last year at this time? Last year at this time, the stock was literally right about exactly where it is right now. On a 1 year basis, Apple's up a whole 3%. So by the time we get to earnings, it's going to be about flat, assuming Apple stock doesn't move from 169. It's basically going in these earnings at basically the same number it was last year. So the good news is the stock has not been a super exciting one. So even if they come in with disappointing, it doesn't mean necessarily the stock's going to crash or something like that, because people have really brought down their expectations substantially in regards to Apple. So, but that will be an interesting one. We'll see. Tim Cook somehow comes in with the numbers a lot of times, but we'll see. Maybe his magic finally ends, okay? All right, guys, appreciate you joining me as always. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate y'all. If you're looking to apply, join my private group, get access to my best course curriculums, 6- and 7-figure Discord chat, get around like-minded investors, all those sorts of things that are focused on the long term. Apply with the pinned comment down there, and we'll see if we can get you in there maybe next week. Much love and have a great day.